Ours.
Oh, I forgot you were so far ahead of me now in points. Oh, it's because I ballsed up and ran into Bottas, isn't it?
Yes.
Damn you, Bottas!
Boo. Now, why hasn't the stream come through? Did I not do it right?
Oh, I got some questions too on Twitter as well, and some feedback.
Ooh.
That at least on... I can't remember if it was on my stream or yours, that I was super loud compared to you.
No, I have... Oh, shut up me. Sorry, I've just heard me. Yes.
Shut up me.
I twitched my gain down. Anyway, hello everybody, and welcome to the wunderbar that is Failcast F1. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Mr. Volkenberg, and alongside me, as always, wielding his taco enchilada extraordinaire, it's Mr. Definitely Zero, Esther Ben. How you doing?
Buenos noches, my friend. I'm really good. I've defaulted again this week to the coconut and blueberry white edition Red Bull, which has become something of an addiction of mine. So let me crack open the beverage, and then I can tell you what's been going on, because oh, such wrong flavours, but together. Wow. So I want everyone's sympathy, because I'm being sent to Switzerland tomorrow by work, like a prisoner of war.
Aww.
And get this, I have to get up at 4 in the morning to get a 4:45 bus to be at the airport in time for a 6 a.m. flight. Then I'm 10 to 6 in meetings, and then they're flying me back the same day because they're too cheap to pay for a hotel. So I get home at like 11 p.m. and then I have a normal work day the next day. So boo on you, employer.
Boo, boo.
But I'm surprisingly chirpy considering, because I've been itching to go on this. I'm quite reasonable at Belgium, although I do feel a DNF coming on, and there's actually loads to talk about, because we've been thrown a little off schedule by real F1 and by you knackering your foot.
Yes, apologies everyone. Good job I don't actually drive with real pedals and wheels and such, which may be a topic we might grace at the end, depending on how out of steam on F1 we're at. Should we ready up and dive in?
Yeah, let's ready up, and then you can tell us about your foot. Because I just revel in anything you do that is embarrassing.
Yes, so... and one of my various jaunts around the country, of which I'm in Grangemouth in Scotland next week, but they won't let me fly, so I have to get a train, which means I have to have an overnight hotel, because it's taken me 7 hours each way. Balance ties. So yeah, all I done was basically, I was trying to get back from a meeting with a company from the London Underground, decided to stick my foot between the platform and the train, kind of, but not enough to get wedged in, and then just stack it all the way across, and then splatter myself all over Tottenham Hale's outside wall, and then just be like, ow! Ow! And then proceed to go, I'll be fine, let's go to dinner, and then just limp around outside of a Bill's diner for most of the evening, going ow, 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 crying in the inside. Always a good look.
I'm glad. I'm glad, to be honest. I mean, I don't want you to be in pain. It tickles me a little bit to hear what happens to you out there in the real world. I have bad news. The race is supposed to end with rain.
Oh,
heavy rain. But the rest is dry. So, I'm not going to let that hold me back. I think the best thing I can do is just pretend that that's not a thing. I already have a fairly high downforce setup, because if I don't, then the car explodes of its own volition at the top of Eau Rouge.
Yes.
It's just the rain makes me nervous with that, because obviously you don't want to lift off in an ideal world, but often... the ideal world is not the one in which we inhabit, and then you end up aquaplaning off into a barrier somewhere in Asia Minor. So I guess we'll see.
We have never lived in a real world, in an ideal world. We've always lived in a world of fail.
And one, you know, we're going to talk about. I know you said we'll touch on it at the end. Why don't we do it now? Because it's only qualifying.
Oh, yeah.
I have bought a wheel and some pedals.
Ah, you devil.
Because it's long been a criticism of people who used to watch my YouTube when I was doing it, and occasional comments still pop up on stream and stuff. You know, you've been doing this for years. Why don't you get a wheel? A wheel will make you faster. You know, and everyone tells me that a wheel will make me faster. Well, let me tell you, that's empirically and provably untrue, because on my first runs with a wheel, I was 7 seconds off my best time with a pad, which is not a small amount. I managed with a bit of practice to get to sort of 3.8 to 4.2 seconds off myself. But I guess it's just going to take a very long time to adjust. I think it's because the pedals have so much more give in them than the triggers on a pad.
Yeah.
That when I think I'm lifting off enough to coast round a corner, I'm actually still at like 75% throttle and burning it. The only advantage I found so far is that it's far easier to save yourself from binning it. Like,
really?
Massively easier. You know, like sometimes you hook on the inside curb on this game.
Yes.
And like that's it, game over. Like no matter how much counter steer you apply, it's too late. You're already dead. Well, having a wheel, the wheel just kicks in your hands, and if you catch it, then no worries. What were you worried about? So I presume that's where people find a lot of the time is simply being able to ride the curbs without dying. But still, so far,
That
not
makes
hugely
sense.
impressed. And the biggest problem I've had is. And I have to credit to Codemasters here, or PlayStation, or both, because what I found is that the pad, the force feedback on the pad, is really great at telling me what's going on with the car, so that I can catch things before they happen. Like, even though there's, I think, only like 4 motors or something in a controller, the vibration tells me everything I need to know to be able to drive the car on the limit for me, by my limit. In the wheel, which is supposed to be way more advanced, I have no fucking idea what's going on at all. At all. I mean, it buzzes and vibrates and kicks and stuff, but it tells me nothing. So the moral of the story is that sim racing equipment is bullshit designed to steal your money.
I was so I've also had this wheel debate as well, and I've always kind of said that whenever I'm doing like a league or something, I will have to basically sit and play only with a wheel during an off season, because otherwise I will never be able to get that improvement out of my head. Because as someone who doesn't drive, even though I do have a driving license, I don't drive in real life, so I have no like muscle memory for being able to use a wheel, so the whole thing is completely alien to me, which is why I've always just been like, yeah, I'll be fine with pad. And I've been able to work particularly on PC games with controller setups so that I can replicate how I want my triggers and analog stick to feel to me, to replicate like a steering wheel motion. And I think that takes a while to then work out what your settings are for a wheel, and particularly the pedals. You're right, because you can feel it through your fingers, because we're trained with that through all of the games. But if you aren't used to it with feet, that's like a whole entire thing to learn.
Well, I mean, that's the key problem I've had, actually. Firstly, all my setups were designed for pad, and they don't translate perfectly.
No.
Oh god, my battery's empty. I thought I was going to improve there, but clearly not. So I'm going to come in for fresh tyres if there's time to get round again. And aside from the fact that my setups are all to cock, what I found is that I can't find a setting on the wheel itself in terms of sensitivity that I'm totally happy with. And because I'm quite lazy, and I think driving with a pad has made me lazy, initially I set it up so like a fairly small movement of the wheel, a comfortable one that doesn't require many calories to be burned. You know, I basically I don't want to drop my crisps was what I was aiming for.
Amazing.
That setup, while somewhat effective in that sense. It meant that I had no reference point for when I was on full lock. So any tight corners would completely throw me. So then I went back to the default setting, which is when you turn the wheel, however much you turn it is exactly replicated by the driver on the screen.
Yeah.
And that didn't help either, because there comes a certain point, like I think once the wheel's almost upside down, where the game just sort of, for want of a better term, politically incorrect warning, spazzes out and stops registering the input, and I go wide. So I don't really know what to do. There's probably some happy medium, but I mean, who has the time? Who has the time?
No, I'd go on and I'd download other people's steering stuff, and I'd be like, that's vaguely close enough. That would do. So yeah, I feel your pain.
That's basically what we do now, isn't it? I mean, it's so much easier. Mm-hmm. As was once said on the Channel 4 comedy Peep Show, sometimes it's really hard to do your own ideas.
That is very, very true, and I love that show. Good job, good drop. Also reminds me of how Rubens Barrichello could never left foot brake, and he right foot braked all the way through his career and refused to change.
That's one of those facts, like, you know, about music. Like, you hear about musicians who can't read music.
Yes.
Like, I still find it impressive, but people say, "Oh, he can't even, you know, write music, you know," or "He can't left foot brake." Like, you're supposed to disparage them, and I'm thinking, well, actually, isn't that testament to his talent that he could keep up with guys who could without having to do it?
Mm-hmm.
You've segued quite nicely. I mean, we are going to review the Bahrain Grand Prix, and we do have a lot of F1 news to talk about, but I did have a question come in.
Ooh.
And I was going to leave it to the end, because usually we squeeze them in at the end, but I'm going to bring it in now, because you've segued into it excellently by mentioning perennial old man Rubens Barrichello. So I got a question through the Twitters, and it's one that I've been pondering, and I don't have a great answer for.
Ooh. Mamma mia.
Who are the drivers? Now we've got to exclude the current grid,
Right.
because there's an obvious answer on the current grid, I think. Who are the best drivers that we think of who didn't ever get a top ride? And I thought, when I read that question at first, I thought, oh, history must be littered with examples. And actually, no, it's not. It actually isn't, because I do tend to think of F1 as sort of overflowing with talent, so that you're constantly overlooking people. But actually, when you look back, certainly through the years I've been watching, it has tended to be that the stronger drivers do end up where they deserve to be. And I was trying to think of examples here, and I only really came out with one, which would be your favourite driver, Mr. Olivier Panis.
Yes!
Because he never really got a top drive, but was certainly an excellent driver. But aside from that, I was stumped, because when you think of drivers who were sort of overshadowed by their teammates, or maybe not as appreciated, you think Rubens Barrichello, but he went to Ferrari, or you think Johnny Herbert, but then you forget he was at Benetton during their high point. And there's so many examples of this. Giancarlo Fisichella, but then you remember, actually, he went to Ferrari at the end of his career, which often gets forgotten about, and he's probably quite happy about that.
Yes.
Can you think of any examples that leap to mind? Because I really stumped myself with this.
I can think of one.
Go on.
But only off the top of my head. And it's a bit of a left field one. Pierluigi Martini.
Actually, I would go with you on that, but didn't Martini? Did he never have a top drive?
No, so he basically moved between Minardi and I'm going to say Lola, but it's not Lola that I'm thinking of. It's the ones that took the Lola.
The Roofs?
No, it's the other ones. There's three teams that I'm thinking of, and it's the third one.
Haas Lola? That was before his time, wasn't it?
Yeah, no, that was the Beatrice in '86. It's going to really piss me off now. They were
Who else took a
Dallara.
roller?
Sorry.
Oh right, you meant so wasn't that Scuderia Italia?
Yeah, and they got ran by Dallara, and he moved to them, and then went back to Minardi with a. He didn't even go to Arrows. I was going to say that was Alboreto.
Oh, Michele Alboreto, gone and definitely forgotten by most people.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I really did think about this. I suppose one example I could vaguely come up with was Alexander Wurz, because he only went to Williams after they were no longer a top team, and I thought he kind of exploded onto the grid, although I struggle to remember if he was actually really great, because, I mean, I was excited when he teamed with Fisichella at Benetton for 98, but I can't remember. The fact that I can't remember any highlights of his career tell me that he probably wasn't as good as a lot of us assumed. I mean, even Mika Salo got a Ferrari drive.
Yeah. I'm pondering around in my head now.
Yeah, I mean, like Frentzen, but he went to Williams when they were at the top of their game.
Yeah.
I mean, JJ Leto was at Benetton.
Admittedly, post-shunt. I watched a fascinating documentary on him, actually, admittedly in Finnish.
But you didn't let that hold you back, and we're all proud of you.
I know. But it was essentially him admitting that he was not physically ready for the start of the 1994 season, and then rushed back because Flavio Briatore hated him so much that he knew that he would never be able to get back in a seat if he didn't turn up. Which I found really funny. But essentially, he still had cracks in his spine and was like, ow, ow, ow. And that's why he ruined his return and then never got on par with everything. And then when he did at San Marino and got smashed into the back of by Lamy, it reopened his injury and he could never recover from it.
Oh. Poor bugger.
Yeah. You could
Carl Wendlinger?
That's what I was going to go for, but then he only had a couple of... I was going to say Maurizio Gugelmin.
That's just a noise, isn't it?
Or because then I was thinking of the Leighton House when they were really, really good, and Ivan Capelli was doing good stuff, but then he went to Ferrari, admittedly in their shit year.
That's right, yeah. Plus also, he drove for Leighton House when they had a great car. I mean, it wasn't a top team, but...
No, but it was their good year, wasn't it? So...
Yeah. It's actually really hard. Like, most people get... If they're worthy of it, they get a shot. And the only person that really springs to mind is Nico Hulkenberg, who is widely considered to be one of the best drivers on the grid by people in the sport, and just never gets a shot. And I was really hopeful that Renault would find their feet this year so he could see what he could do. But it seems they haven't. So we'll open that up to the floor. If anyone watching, you can Twitter us, or you can comment on chat or on the replays. If you have an example of a driver who was really good but never got a shot at a top team, and when we say really good, we're not including junior formulae here, like someone who did a solid job in F1 but was never allowed to progress. Pascal Wehrlein is excluded because he was embarrassed by Marcus Ericsson. So. Yes. That allows us to segue, I suppose, into the meat and potatoes of today's episode, which is obviously the Bahrain Grand Prix, which I thought was superb.
I agree. It was very al dente to my taste. And, I had a thoroughly good time.
The first thing I want to ask you about it is, a lot of the drivers are saying that the aero regs have actually made it easier to follow. And it did look like that, didn't it? I mean... I thought there was a lot of very competitive racing in that, and I didn't feel the cars had to be as conservative as they have in previous years, which resulted in a lot of shift in the field over the course of the race. Like there was a lot of overtaking going on.
There was. To be fair, I did notice that they were able to run closer, not necessarily overtake, but run closer in Australia. But I think because of the nature of the track, Australia versus Bahrain, is that coupled with the third DRS zone and all of that stuff, made it very. It's like a good melting pot of everything mixing together, so that it all is at its best. So yeah, I approve, and I can only see the same happening at China as well, which traditionally has that humongous back straight for plenty of overtaking as well.
Yeah, that's true. I'm very much looking forward to that as well. I just think it's been a very promising start to the new season. I like the way the field is running, even though a lot of it I didn't predict. So without further ado then, we will dive right in, and I guess we'll mix sort of quali and racing together, because, why not? Yeah. And I want to start by talking about Haas, because, nobody seems to know what's happened to them. Kevin Magnussen did what I thought was a creditable job in qualifying. Solid work from the Kevmeister, but in the race, absolutely fucking nowhere. And it's been a long while. I would say maybe the 2012 Mercedes was a good example, but it's very rare that you see a car turn up to a Grand Prix and be absolutely stonking over a single lap and then garbage for race distance.
Mm-hmm. It's normally the other way around. It doesn't tend to happen
so much these days.
Yeah. There's something for me, and I've taken a look at it, but because the team haven't said anything, I've just kind of gone, oh, maybe it was just me. But into lap 1, turn 1, it really looks to me like K-Mags clouts the inside curb really heavily. But I was like, oh, maybe that ruins some balance of something. But because they don't seem to think so, I've just gone, nope, rookie me on the sofa. I was throwing you ketchup and mistakes there, Haas, but nope. So yeah, it was bizarre, and there's clearly pace in that car, but it seems to be really situational, because they didn't look like they were capable of some of that in the earlier practice sessions either. And then it seemed to all just click together for quali, and I was like, oh, okay, they were just keeping it quiet, but maybe not. So yeah, scratchy heady.
Yeah, I mean, it does remind me a little bit, I suppose, of some of the Mercedes over the last few years that have to be in the right mood, have had enough sleep, have the oil warmed up to the right temperature, and then they unlock massive pace. It just seemed so specific to qualifying, and it just struck me as odd. Now, there was a lot of quite strong winds actually during the race, and I do wonder if that was upsetting things. There was quite a lot of dust on the circuit, obviously with sand blowing on, so I mean that could be another factor, and quite a few teams had trouble unlocking their tyres over race distance, I was reading. But still, it's the sort of performance that Haas, given where they are now, it's the sort of performance I think where Haas can be leaving rightfully disappointed in themselves. I'm not saying there's anything they could have done really to improve on the performance. Maybe it's just an inherent failure of the car, but still, the fact that they don't seem to have an answer for it, that's quite worrying, particularly given how much crossover there is between their car and the one that was pretty dominant, to be honest. Hello there, mate. Good to hear from you. Beetlejuice has joined us.
Hey, BJ.
I hope you're well.
Although, actually, now that you've just said that, what's the other car that has gone from one terrible race to one amazing race out of the two so far?
Yeah, that is true. However, I heard... we'll talk about them in more detail later on, but I did hear the same theory that you were talking about in our last episode from the lips of one Mr. Will Buxton.
Yes.
And it does seem that they were running with a power deficit for reliability concerns, which may be well-founded given what happened, which again we'll talk about later on. So, I mean, all in all, I just think it's been a fairly underwhelming start to the season for Haas, given where they looked to be in pre-season and the glimpses of pace that we have seen from them. I mean, the fact that they balls up a pit stop again in Australia, I didn't think reflected very well either.
No.
And I do wonder if this is a team that's going to continually underperform despite having a competently engineered car. You know, a touch of the Ligiers about them.
That does sound like something you'd have to go to a hospital for.
Yeah.
Quite a nasty case of Ligier.
I've got a nasty case of the Ligiers.
I've got to write that down. That's amazing. What was I going to say? Yeah.
Yes, mate, Haas.
It's one of those... with the field so close as to where it is, and this year is clearly going to be a development year, and I do wonder quite what Haas can do in terms of actual development over the course of the year, because yes, they kind of kept it up over the course of last year, but they did slip behind effectively Renault essentially when they came good and all of that kind of stuff, and false Stroll Badger. So these are the races that they need to capitalise on. These aren't the races where, yet again, for the second year in a row, they're dropping points through poor pit stops, reliability, Romain Grosjean somehow managing to get caught up in an accident even when he's not having one. And like anonymous races, this is not the time. They can have that later on when their development has dropped off. So yeah, I think it's going to be another costly season where they think and they potentially have the pace to be fourth, and they'll end up 6th or 7th.
It was their early season that messed them up last year, really, wasn't it?
Yeah.
To be fair, if they capitalised on the results they were capable of, then it wouldn't have even been that close for fourth place. Beetlejuice asks if we're measuring our expectations against them from last year. Oh shit! I was reading and went off the track. I have to learn.
Busy
Read on the
laughing and
straights.
just spun.
Read on the straights. I nearly did a Grosjean there, which would have been, perfect timing, I suppose. But
Yeah.
I think you've got a measure of me here, mate, because it wasn't even close. You were like 4/10 clear of me, and I was going as well as I could reasonably expect. Bottas has got me now as well, because I'm on the slower tyre, and I took a detour through the grass. Let me see if I can put another lap on these tyres. Because they outperformed their margins by quite a margin last year. I mean, well, they did. They exceeded expectations. I'm happy to say that. But I don't know. I still think this is where they're starting to suffer for there being a customer team. Because they have the car, but they just don't have the innate knowledge that allows them to maximise it. It reminds me very much of the years where Sauber was running a Ferrari. Like basically it was a year-old Ferrari package, and yeah, it's a solid platform. It did well in the hands of Ferrari, but Sauber never really unlocked the same kind of potential from it because they didn't understand it. And I do wonder if there's a touch of that at Haas.
You don't have that intimate knowledge if you've not built it all yourself.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's hard to say. I was just surprised to see such a differential between practice to quality to race. But still, I mean, I still rate Kevin Magnussen really highly, actually, and I think he and Haas are a good fit together, and I'm pretty sure they'll unlock something as the year goes on.
That's his home.
Grosjean, on the other hand, having now watched the F1 documentary on Netflix, Drive to Survive, I am completely stumped as to why Gunter Steiner kept him on, because it seems like even he doesn't know. And during that Grand Prix, it cut to the pit wall, and you saw Gunter Steiner, head in hands, really annoyed with Grosjean again. And I couldn't have any sympathy, because I was like, well, you've brought this on yourself.
Yep.
I mean, in that documentary, he spent the entire season ripping on Roman and criticising him quite outwardly, and then signed him again. Yeah, I mean, Beetlejuice says loyalty is the only explanation. Yeah, it probably is, but actually no, I'd also say madness. Like maybe the inside of his office it's got lead paint on the radiators or something, and he's just, like a mad hatter who's just absorbed a lot of lead through the skin or through the air, and now he's completely mad. I mean, he does say mad things. What was his quote this week? No one would be complaining about the Haas model if we were last. And I don't know what argument he was trying to make there, because, well, duh. I mean, that's the point. That is the point of the whole argument. People don't like you buying your car off the shelf when they spend millions to build theirs because you have an inbuilt advantage from piggybacking on a much bigger outfit. Who would have been the alternative, though? That is a good question. Well, I mean, to be honest, whether Ocon would have been allowed to drive for Haas is highly debatable. Mm-hmm. But certainly he was on the market. But I mean, all kinds of people. I mean, they've been testing Pietro Fittipaldi, and maybe it's a bit too early to bring him up, and I don't know if he qualifies for a super license, but certainly there are Haas-branded younger drivers.
Santino Ferrucci.
Yeah, Santino Ferrucci. Marcus Ericsson.
Yeah.
They could have had a handsome and blonde Scandinavian lineup.
Yes.
I mean, Pascal Wehrlein. There were a lot of options out there, and I just think Grosjean was so poor last season that it became very hard to creditably defend him. Yes, Santino Ferrucci is famously a dick. Yes.
Oh yeah, he's famously a dick, but he's now actually like a decent midfield runner in IndyCar, and finding his feet and actually showing a little bit of what he's made of in terms of racing skill, even if I absolutely despise him with every fibre of my being.
Yeah. It just points out Grosjean's race performance was poor, but on pace he beats all the names that you've mentioned. I would concede you're correct there, but the problem is that if you don't finish the race, then your pace is arguably irrelevant. I mean, Jarno Trulli was an amazing qualifier, but I mean, you could take him or leave him in terms of end of season point standing in most
Pastor
seasons.
was quick.
Yeah, Pastor Maldonado was quick. That's a good point, actually. He was. But it's easy to be quick if you don't know what the brakes do.
I'd love to see him back in a Haas. A Pastor Maldonado.
Jarno was indeed in F1 for a long time. I was a big Jarno Trulli fan, but I'd be the first to admit that his talent lay in qualifying and then in the race. I mean, that's why we have the term Trulli train, right? He didn't have race pace. And while quality is important, I would always favour a driver who gets good race results over one who gets good quality results or a good single lap pace.
Agreed.
But, you know, horses for courses. I mean, I don't want to sit here and be someone who hates on Romain Grosjean. I mean, Simon and I spent the whole of the 2013 and 14 seasons defending him.
Yeah.
Because I think he was a fairly young driver still then. He had the right attitude, and it was very much the same criticism we had of Max Verstappen recently, which was he just didn't have the racecraft yet. The problem he's got now is that he's arguably one of the senior drivers on the grid, and he's still fluffing it.
Mm-hmm. And fluffing it way more than any of the newbies that are coming in.
Yeah, and yeah, I agree. The other 19 bosses would have gotten rid of him. Absolutely. Yeah, completely concur. I don't think many have the same. I mean, the one thing I will give Haas credit for is they do seem to be one of the more human teams on the grid.
Yeah.
Like, whenever you look into their garage, they do genuinely seem to have a camaraderie that you don't actually see in many of the pit garages, or at least I don't get the impression that you do. I mean, Red Bull always pretend to have a party atmosphere, but you know that's a cold stone corporate environment from the way they treated Webber and Ricciardo.
Drink your Red Bull.
Anyway, I suppose we shouldn't dwell purely on Haas. No. I would like to discuss McLaren's performance over the weekend.
Yes, please, because that was a beautiful improvement and a surprise and a warm one at that for me. Yeah, completely. I think McLaren may have begun to turn the corner at long last. At least that's my hope. My heart bleeds for Carlos Sainz.
because I think he could have had a very successful Grand Prix.
Yes.
But yet again, he wasn't allowed to.
By the same person as per usual.
Yeah, I was genuinely excited to see what he could do, and I wish nothing. Don't you sell the rug before you've slain the bear.
I just had a comment in from Ryan Walker. To be fair to Trulli, his drive at Suzuka 2009 was one of the best drive I've seen in his F1 career. So there we go.
He was with Toyota then, right?
Yes.
Because I remember him putting in some stonking qualies in his year at Toyota, or was it 2 years? But
he was there for about
all in all, because I think he probably was a Toyota driver who came closest to sort of a consistent level of success. But I mean, still, and I'm a fully paid up member of the Jarno Trulli fan club. It's just I can't look at his race pace performance across his career and say, that's a spicy enchilada.
Yeah.
You know, it's more of a barbecued salad.
Anyway.
Yeah, you're right. It's probably, I mean, we do try and avoid judging judging a team or a driver based on a single race performance, but it's the second time that Norris has made it into Q3, so he's 2 for 2. He did make it to Q3 in Australia, didn't he?
Yeah.
I just want to make sure I wasn't dreaming that, because it has happened before. Like, I've said something on this podcast, it turns out I just dreamt it. And, you know, so certainly there is an element of qualifying pace there. I think the Renault power unit has got to start being a concern for them. I don't think they've necessarily come out smelling of roses from all that, and I'm sure Bahrain didn't fill them with confidence for the remainder of the season. However, I think Norris is certainly showing a very measured and capable attitude that I didn't expect to see from him early on. There was some question marks with him coming in about whether he was going to go the way of Stoffel Van Dorn, and of course that's the nature of F1 press, that, you know, they'd always sell the rug before they've killed the bear. But it was a concern of mine as well, because being at a bad team or being at the right team at the wrong time can be a career killer. Certainly, you know, Pascal Wehrlein can stand as testament to that. But I've been encouraged by McLaren's early season performance. I'm just my heart bleeds for Carlos Sainz. He's the latchkey kid of Formula One.
But he's also yet again, it's at the hands of Max Verstappen. There's a couple of things there with that specific move that I can't decide on my opinion of. Yes, the move was done, but he should know that Max Verstappen would say, I don't think so, and throw it in anyway. So I don't know if it was because it was him. Oh, Raikkonen's got a 5-place grid drop.
Good.
Amazing. I wonder why. What did he do? Oh, he smashed into Vettel. Fuck you, Teamy. Yeah, so there's a couple... So for me, Carlos should know that it was Max that he was going up against, and therefore should have given a slightly little bit more of a wider berth. However, Verstappen once again was very lucky to come off of yet another collision. I find myself yo-yoing so much with that guy, but I think because I feel that I'm always yo-yoing about that guy, I know I'd have given him an extra half a car's width if I could have done, and stayed wide around the outside and ensured that everything stayed in place.
I know exactly what you're saying, but I'm going to counter it at this point because what's happening? I know, dissent in the ranks. But for real, hear me out, right? And I don't know if people watching agree with me on this, but I'm getting increasingly concerned that up and down the grid, it has become taboo to even attempt to overtake Max Verstappen. There is like a force field around him, and no matter how petulant or aggressive he is in his defensiveness, it's kind of become, oh well, it's Max Verstappen, what do you expect? and I don't know if we should be okay with that. Like, I don't know if I want drivers to stop going for the gap with him just because they presume he's going to be too aggressive in his defence and there's going to be an accident. Like, I mean, I didn't want to see Carlos go out, but would I have been happy to see Carlos stay behind him despite arguably having the pace to get by because he was too scared to approach?
No,
and it's a difficult one for me because I don't want to see more penalties in Formula One. I appreciate that penalties new to the race and stuff, but like, how much leeway do we give a driver like Verstappen to just slam the door shut on people all the time?
With that one specifically, at the angles of which you go into that corner, it's a difficult one because I always feel like the person on the outside is more than likely going to be the one that comes off worse, which is why I'd have given him more room. If I'd have dived up the inside, I'd have done it in a way that maybe I could have connected wheels in a different way, and then maybe he would have been the worse off one. I think it's going to take, and having learnt this the hard way through sim racing at the back of the field, where everyone just assumes that because you are generally 32nd out of 35 on the grid, that you'll just dutifully get out of the way because you're worthless. And I won't. I'll put up a fight even if I am 3 seconds a lap slower. And then people get disrespectful and will just throw it up the inside because they think that you can. So from the reverse standpoint, I ended up getting into more collisions than probably what I should do because it establishes that boundary of actually, no, you've got to overtake me properly. And so I completely see where you're coming from. But I think it needs... I don't know. I think I need to see Max come off worse on some more collisions for him to then realise that he doesn't have this golden aura and for other people to take that advantage to him. I don't know if I'm making sense.
You are, but it just... I don't know. It's still... I can't think of a satisfactory solution. I mean, like, in an ideal world, he would learn through trial and error, like you're describing, that he would come off worse from aggressive defending.
Yep.
But given that the rear of the car tends to be so much more robust than the front of the car, I think 9 times out of 10, if he slams the door on you, you're coming off worse. Because the front wings are flimsy as it is, but, you know, end plates fly off if you so much as look at them. But also the front suspension is nowhere near as rigid as the rear. I'm just expecting any day now to hear a radio message from an engineer to a driver saying, oh, just sit behind him till the pit stops because, you know, we want to finish the race. And I don't think that should ever be permissible in the sport. And it's hard to really quantify properly because it's not like I want Verstappen to roll over either. I mean, we want to see good racing. It's just other drivers are able to defend cleanly. And, you know, I think there were some great examples in Bahrain, actually. Particularly I'm thinking of battles between Hamilton and Vettel, until Vettel lost it, of course. Mm-hmm. That show drivers can defend forcefully and still not hit each other. It's about both understanding the nature of what you're doing. You know, both drivers appreciating, like, yes, we're racing, but we both want to finish the Grand Prix, and it's better to finish 4th than to defend 3rd to the point that you maybe have terminal race damage and get no points at all. And I think that's something Max is still lacking. I think he's had a very strong start to the season, and the fact that he's picking up points is sort of defending him a little bit as well. Mm-hmm. But I do have to say that as time goes on, I'm more and more concerned about the way that people sort of just expect him to throw a toddler tantrum over a single position and just let him get away with it. Thinking has cost me 0.2 of a second. There's a lesson in there, kids. Don't stay in school. So yeah, really, we wandered off topic there, but, you know, staying on topic with McLaren, certainly an encouraging result. It would have been far easier to judge if both drivers were able to finish where they arguably should have done. Because if Sainz had been able to finish, you know, somewhere around and about where where Lando did, and they were able to get a double points finish, then you'd be able to more confidently say, yes, they're in a far healthier position going forward. And Sainz did actually say in an interview with Autosport this week that he honestly believes that this McLaren has more development potential than the cars around them. I don't know on what grounds he's saying that, but I presume he's speaking from experience with other cars that he's worked with, that maybe there's a feeling inside the team that, okay, well, now we've got a solid foundation, this is a car that we will actually bother to develop throughout the year. Now, as Beetlejuice said earlier, McLaren have shown recently that they've lost the magic a little bit with their ability to develop through the season, which was always kind of a hallmark of theirs.
Yeah.
However, it's an encouraging start, and if they can build on it with some level of regularity, then I don't see why they can't make a push on 4th or 5th in the Constructors long term. I mean, certainly they need to have both cars finishing in the points to get there, but there's nothing I've seen so far that inclines me to believe that's not possible.
No, I agree. I think for me, so I remember McLaren getting double points finishes in Australia and Bahrain last season. As crazy as that may have sounded, that did actually happen. Even Waffle woke up. So for me, I need to, because what I don't know, and what I don't think anyone particularly knows, is exactly when McLaren decided, no, this car's a turd. Let's not bother with this one until and work towards 2019. When did they switch that off? Because how far had McLaren already fallen away by that point? And so I just want to make sure that they don't do that so early this year and go, oh, it's a mess, 2020. Because I don't think that's I don't think you can continue to do that, because it's just throwing in so much resource and drama. And if they've done that last year and gone, right, this is now our base car, what's that saying to everyone that's then had an entire year of going, soz, we failed, let's try again, and then you failed again? You can't sweep that under the carpet and go la 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 and just hope for the best, because then there's something fundamentally wrong with how McLaren can develop a chassis. And I know that so it feels like there's something fundamentally good with this car, so I'd like to see them stick with it and develop it as a concept for the future, even if that is only for this year and next year before the 2021 rigs come in.
Just you wait and see how close we are.
I made a problem in the final corner because Sainz was pitting and I smacked my front wing into him and lost a chunk. So I think there's a 10th maybe I can have.
I definitely think you're faster than me here, because you've been sort of 3 to 4 tenths faster since we started the show. But I'm hoping that
35 thousandths.
Yeah,
drive out.
I tell you what, moving to PlayStation was definitely the best thing we ever did for the show, because ever since then we have been so much closer than we were on PC, where one of us always had a shitbox PC and was getting a crappy frame rate, and Codemasters used to tie the speed you could travel to your frame rate. So if your frame rate was low, then your time moved slower relative to the server time, and you couldn't get a fast lap time. It was completely nuts. Anyway, moving on from McLaren then, although the last thing I want to say about them is just how tragic it is that they can't accept that Fernando's broken up with them. They released their IndyCar this year.
Yes.
For this year, the other day, I was like, oh, Nando, come and stay at our place. It'll be like the old times. I can't tell you how long it is to see a McLaren powered by a Chevrolet engine. That just does not ring my bell. But yeah, it seems a little pathetic to me now. Like, they had him testing the F1 car as well in the Bahrain test, and I don't agree with that.
I really strongly do not agree with that, because he's left you, even though you're all in partnership together, blah 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 blah. But that shows, to me, that is an undermining snash in the face for Carlos and for Lando, of basically saying we don't trust you. And if that's their future, it doesn't matter what Fernando says because you're developing it around what those two driving styles are, and he might have something wildly different. And if he's come in and gone, "Hey, it's me, a Fernando," and then decided to take it down a different direction because that's what he thinks and feels, and it's not congruent to what Sainz and Lando want, then shame on McLaren and fall on them for going down a garden path yet again.
Well, I mean, the thing is, I can't get over the image of sort of Ron Dennis in his office with a photo of Nando on his desk and then a dartboard with the pictures of Carlos and Lando on two different halves, and then throwing a dart to figure out whose career he's going to fuck in order to get Nando back. Like, I just can't get over that impression because they will not let him go. And then, Fernando's not helping by saying, well, if an offer came to me that was, a chance to be competitive again, then yes, I'd come back. And it just frustrates me. It just frustrates me because clearly something wasn't working in that partnership. And moving beyond Fernando, as great a driver as he was, gives them a chance to start afresh.
Yep.
Two relatively young drivers, both seem very promising. I think Sainz has certainly proved himself over his latchkey kid career, where nobody loves him. That give him a stable home, as it were, and I think he's ready to step up and start leading a team. Lando Norris seems an incredibly promising prospect to me, and so basically I just want to see McLaren get their head screwed on straight, and I want to see Carlos given a chance to show us what he can really do, because I think he proved to Toro Rosso that he can basically go toe-to-toe with Verstappen. It's just they were never ever prepared to consider him in the way they were prepared to consider Verstappen for drives.
Yeah.
The odds were always stacked against him. I'm watching you, like Sting in that song.
Fucking up the final corner. I think it actually worked to my advantage, actually. Second.
Oh, I pipped you. I honestly didn't see that coming. So
I hit the barriers on the turn that has no name.
Mm.
So I think that will be where you won me. 18,000s. Right,
yeah,
I couldn't even fit an anorexic through that.
I've been doing some statistical work.
Oh.
And I can say that this is my fourth career poll in the Failcast. All of them on PlayStation. Beetlejuice asked, before we start the race, can we have both of our help? Of course you can, sir. Anytime, anything for you. What can we do for you?
What can we do indeed? There was something I wanted to say about McLaren, and I've forgotten now. Oh, I think it was just, I really like the look of the Indy 500 car, though. That's all I wanted to say. I just love the livery and the way this year's livery, you could, I think, chuck it all over a Mini Cooper and I'd still be like,
Beetlejuice asks about Albon, given that he was a karting phenomenon, but he now thinks he has the most difficult jobs of all the rookies in terms of the situation he's in. Put up against a highly motivated Kvyat, who he rates as talented. So how do we judge Albon this year, really? That is actually a really good question, and I think Red Bull are starting to query themselves about that.
yes.
Because I saw a piece in Autosport just before we went live, where Red Bull were explaining why they found Albon impressive. Unfortunately, I didn't have time to read it because it only went up today, and I didn't get a chance to look. But I guess Red Bull even felt the need to qualify that. I mean, I think if he can be around or ideally beat Kvyat, then that's already the key metric, right? Beat your teammate is key. Yeah. That said, I think Kvyat 2.0 is showing some of the right stuff. Now, Simon and I made a joke pre-season about Kvyat coming back, doing really well, Gasly fluffing it at Red Bull, and the two of them being swapped. and the reason Simon's laughing is that in a particular British newspaper, their F1 correspondent went on the record as saying that actually is potentially going to happen. Now, Red Bull said at the start of the season that they weren't going to judge Gasly on sort of the first 5 races, but we know that's a lie because Red Bull said it. And it's to do with driver performance. And the fact that Kvyat made kind of a point in his battle with Gasly during the Bahrain Grand Prix, I think it could happen. And if it does happen, if Kvyat were to Kvyat Gasly, then I think all Albon has to do is stay straight and true. And because the fact that they obviously may end up seeing Gasly as someone who needs another year or two of evaluation before being fired, which is the Red Bull way, then that pretty much safeguards Albon for another season. I think Dan Ticktum is the one that long-term everyone in the Red Bull seat has to worry about, because they seem to have a colossal boner for him. But I would say Albon's actually impressed me at the start, and I don't know if it's because I had low expectations, because I didn't really know much about him.
I had decent expectations for him, but I do agree with Beetlejuice that he has the hardest challenge of all the rookies, because Lando can kind of go, oh well, Carlos is really excuse me, experienced, we're learning the car, we're a team in rebuild. George Russell, poor guy. And then what else is there? I'm not even going to dignify Kubica as a rookie, although it feels like he is sometimes. I guess for me, for Albon, I know that he's very, very talented. He's actually got, in theory, some of the best like karting CV out there. Less of the junior category, because if you think like he was third between himself, Russell, and Norris, so therefore you'd automatically think that he's probably going to be the worst of the three. But he was more of the consistent, quieter one, which kind of matches his persona and his personality actually. And that's why I think he'll be a good under the radar. I can see him though turning into the new Verne for the Red Bull program, where he's talented, he can do very well, but he doesn't tick a demographic for them unless they want to launch him as the Asian superstar, which I think is where they've gone with Dan Ticktum by sending him off to Super Formula and getting him to do Asian Formula 3 and being like, next minute he will have his hair dyed blonde, mark my words, so that he can appeal to the Asian market, and then he can sip Red Bulls as their little Asian dream. That'll be my only worry with Albon, but then I'd have the same problem with Kvyat. He's not marketable outside of Russia, and so I think you're right. Ticktum ultimately is where their hard-on lies, but Albon's got a good couple of seasons, I think, before he would get the turf one or another, and I think he'd be one of those people that has the personality, stamina, and ability to be picked up outside of the Red Bull program and have a future.
The thing that most surprises me about Alexander Albon is the fact that he clearly looks Thai, because he is, but he speaks like Stephen Fry. Like, that's an exaggeration, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. He's very polite. I don't know if
that, but he's very well spoken. He's like, oh, hello there. Can I offer you a port or a brandy? And
someone learnt English with mummy, or mother rather. Yeah.
But I think he's had a great start. I don't know what you guys think. We might as well segue into Toro Rosso, actually.
Yeah.
But I think he's done everything that one could reasonably expect of him. I think Kvyat is looking alive and wary, and the car doesn't look too shabby overall, does it?
No, it doesn't. It's been suitably midfield all the way through. I think them working much closer with having Honda. The same Onjing deal? Christ, what did Bottas do there? That was a nuts start.
He is one mad bastard, though.
Where are you? Where are you? Where are you? Okay, you're there.
Right behind you. Big accident. Big accident's going to happen. I had to back off. I've taken
someone's had
Bottas
an
out.
accident. Oh, superb. That'll teach you for having a good start, Brotas.
Well, I was sandwiched between the two of you. And that's not no offence to either of you, but that's not a sandwich I wanted to be the filling in, particularly going into Eau Rouge.
Not now he's got a beard. You'll never know quite what's going to happen.
No. Big Daddy Bottas.
Daddy Bottas.
With his bare beard.
There's something to have on Grindr, right?
Yeah, I could actually. I mean, I'm certainly concerned about Gasly's performances so far for Red Bull, because I don't think anybody would be too critical of him had he been beaten by Verstappen in every session so far. It's the size of the gap that's alarming. And I'm all for giving guys time to settle in and everything, but I'm not going to be super duper critical of Red Bull for having concerns at this stage, because the gap is
gigantic,
unacceptably large. It reminds me of Johnny Herbert versus Schumacher.
Yeah. Or Palmer-esque, to bring it to a modern territory. But there's
I think round 2 is a bit early to be talking about Kvyatting him.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But the worrying thing for me with Gasly is that actually, when you come to practice sessions, quite often he's actually on par time-wise. So it's a performance issue when it matters, and that's more worrying and more difficult, I think, to try and string it all together. Because it's clear that it's not I can chip away and I'll chip away a tenth for each round or something. It's I've got it innately there, but I can't get it up at the right session, for want of a better phrase.
Now you've seared into my mind's eye a Viagra commercial starring Pierre Gasly.
I don't have this hair for nothing, you know.
Beetlejuice says he feels Gasly was overrated based on his P4 last year. I completely agree. There wasn't much about Gasly last year that I found super encouraging, to be honest with you. I mean, I didn't think he did a terrible job, but I thought it was maybe a bit early to be promoting him. But I didn't expect Red Bull to do anything else. I am feeling quite strongly the extra downforce on my car, because I seem to be catching you in the corners, but you are blitzing me on all the fast sections of the track, which is unfortunate because it's basically a whole string. Yeah. But you might find that I come alive later on because I've got more downforce, and when the heavy rain hits, which it's supposed to, that might be my time to shine.
I'm also didn't realise just how much extra fuel I'd put in the car, so I'm mixed fuel feeling it at the minute as well.
Oh shit, yeah, I need to pay attention to my fuel. That's become a bit of a bad habit of mine, sort of running out of fuel halfway through a race. Gotta watch that. Well, it seems like we're all on the same page really regarding Toro Rosso. So we won't dwell on them. Let's get the elephant in the room out of the way, which is Williams, because I find them the most boring team to discuss right now. Because, well, what can you say really, except they fucked it, haven't they? I mean, they've just fucked it.
I didn't expect them to be so horrifically don't touch the curbs, and I'm like, it's round 2. You can't. Even HRT managed this. Come on. Do you know what I mean? I was getting suitably angry, and I feel so bad for George Russell, who has kept up appearances as best as possible throughout. But even him in his post-race briefing, he was like, at least at this race, I actually got to re-overtake Kubica a couple of times before I pulled away. And I was like, even he's like, round 2 for fuck's sake.
I completely agree with you, Beetlejuice. I too like the Williams livery, but that puts me and you in a minority of 2, I believe, because most people I speak to hate it.
I love that.
Oh, and Simon as well, so that makes 3 of us. But most people I speak to cannot stand it. They really hate it.
But it's because they're coming off the back of loving the Martini brand. I think if they didn't, if they came from a different brand elsewhere, I think people would be loving that livery much more.
Jeffers tells me rain in 10 minutes.
Oh Christ, that's early.
That wasn't the deal, Jeff.
That was not the
45
deal.
minutes.
He's not said anything to me yet.
Well, maybe he's starting to favour me, or maybe he's being deceptive. It's like the quote that popped up from our 2014 season, where I asked for a teammate update, and he said, "We don't know what tyres they're on." It's like, just ask the other guy. You're sat next to him. Ask him.
Was it Sad Asian Man?
Yeah, it was. It was Depressed Asian Man. Right, I'm starting to regret having so much downforce on the car, even though it means I don't have to freak out going up Eau Rouge.
You won't when it's raining. I will be nowhere when it rains. That's
I don't think I can keep Vettel behind me. Now, the only thing really to talk about with Williams, to my mind, is do you think it's going to ruin George Russell's career?
No.
See, I wish I was so confident, because you and George Russell seem to have the same opinion on this.
And I think, but...
Oh, shit.
So the oh, what's happened?
Fucking front wing damage, like always.
Oh, no!
Confirmed change.
Well, I've been told rain in 15.
Actually, super softs.
Yeah, switch to a two-stopper.
Yeah. How did the Mercedes test go for Russell? That is an excellent question. I wasn't paying attention. But I think it's because all the testing news I saw was regarding Mick Schumacher.
Ugh.
And how everyone suddenly got a boner for him. I don't actually know how well Russell did, to be completely frank with you. I think he did. I think he did okay. I mean, certainly he's impressed me with his attitude. I wish I could say he's impressed me with his driving, but he's really been beating a man with one arm, which is sort of the least you'd expect for someone in the top level of motorsport.
And has your opinion of Kubica improved, diminished?
Well, I mean, I'd say diminished, but it hasn't really, because what's happening is exactly what I predicted would happen. Nobody's winning out of this deal. Nobody. It's just going badly for all of them. I mean, wasn't he lapped by Russell again?
No.
No, but he was an extra lap down, that was it. It was Australia where Russell lapped him, and in this one he was 2 laps down to Russell's 1.
Yes.
That's right.
Although they were much closer on the track. I think it was about 20 seconds or something.
So, I don't know at what point Williams begin to question this, because, I mean, you could argue, like, the car's so terrible, what does it matter if Kubica's off the pace so badly?
Yeah.
I mean, during the race, they were able to race each other, but it just... Someone with the experience and reputation of Kubica should be able to hold his own, and over race distance, I think it's just that he gets tired. Because in the early race, you know, he even got past Russell briefly, as I recall. I don't know if Russell made a mistake or what, but...
yeah, it was just a better start.
They were certainly racing each other. But then, you know, it just sort of goes away over the course of the Grand Prix, and I don't know if that's his injury. Yeah, it's a good point. Probably sold more merchandise in Poland than they have anywhere in the last 4 years. Yeah, I agree. Although I would be surprised, actually, because I was preparing for my annual merchandise review, and a Williams team shirt. Would you care to guess what they're charging?
Oh, God. Twice as much as they should?
Yeah, that's a good answer. But do you want to try and put a monetary value onto that?
60.
100 euros.
What?
Excluding postage. Beetlejuice was close, 120 euros. Like, that is mad. Like, usually the most expensive for sort of the standard performance team t-shirt the most you would expect to see is about €80, and that was always Sauber always had the most expensive shirts because they were dealing in Swiss francs, and that was excluding postage. So I believe for my Sauber shirt I paid something like 110. However, it's quite common now to set a price point of sort of 60 to 75 euros until the end of the season. Oh yeah, I mean stuff like raincoats and hoodies and quarter zips and everything are really expensive, particularly raincoats. Like it's not uncommon to see raincoats at like 250 euros a pop. But my metric is always like the team T-shirt, the one that the drivers wear for press conferences and so on. And generally, you know, Red Bull, you're talking 65 to 70-ish is fairly common, and most teams kind of follow that lead. Renault tended to be a bit more expensive, and Sauber were usually the most expensive. But you know, ballpark, that was what you were talking. So I actually quite like the Williams team wear for this year, and I thought maybe that's my purchase for the season. I'll get a Williams shirt. Turns out Williams disagree, because I'm not paying €100 for that shirt. It's not happening. Now maybe Poland will. I would be surprised, but maybe they will. But I'm guessing they're selling a lot of caps and Kubica branded merchandise. That's true, and of course I guess a lot of their sponsorship is tied to Kubica, but I do wonder how long that will last as well, because
surely they'll want to actually see some airtime and some vague results of some sort.
Exactly. Right, I'm going to turn. I'm going to crank things up here and see if I can't get past a few cars. And I really hope the rain comes when Jeff says it will, because that'll save my strategy. Otherwise, I am ballsed, is I believe the term. Okay, so I guess we don't really have a lot to say regarding Williams, because there's not really a lot to this. Oh wow!
I'll be very interested.
There's a Sauber in the barrier.
I'll be very interested. Oh, there was another one in the pits, I think, that had gone round really slowly for a lap, so they're having a shit time. I'd be very interested to see how what Patrick Head wants to do first.
Shout
and cry and scream and have a paddy. Not a paddy low though.
No, a different kind of paddy. That, to be honest, is what you could brand him as. To be honest. Patrick Head, a different kind of paddy. But I mean, you know, even when things are going well, what Patrick Head likes to do is shout.
Really true.
Renault always disappoints with merch. Such a cool colour scheme to do. Yeah, I agree. Actually, Renault's merchandise is a bit disappointing, and it's usually overpriced. Actually, why don't we move on to Renault?
Yeah.
Because that's a team I've been looking forward to discussing. Now, the first thing I want to bring up is, what's your take on what's going on with Danny Rick? Because I felt actually his race, there was moments in the race at least where he wasn't doing too badly. And I certainly felt Bahrain could have been a good Grand Prix for Renault, because their car seems to be the easiest on its tyres, and that looked like it was going to deliver some results for them.
It did. I do think they threw Danny Rick on a strategy that was only ever going to fail, and he made the best of a bad job. Like, just no. That was the only person you'd ever want to throw that on, was maybe Giovinazzi if we're going to do a Geo train.
Oh, fucking hell. Will people stop taking my wing off, please?
Oh, not again. Oh, there's a sirens for the front wing change.
Yeah. I'm not changing it again. It's just I got past Gasly, and then he came down the inside and just clipped. I've got an orange front wing, but we'll deal with it. Sorry, please do continue.
What was I going to say? Oh yeah, so I thought that was really annoying. I think it was really sloppy though, the incident with Hulkenberg. I just thought that was terrible driving, but symptomatic of the fact that they'd stuck him on a god awful strategy. Where of course,
yeah, I mean Beetlejuice picked up on that as well. I mean, there was no way that strategy was going to work out. Really, was there? It just wasn't going to happen.
The Red Bulls haven't bothered to pit. They've kept going, as is the clerk. Okay.
I mean, I don't know if it's the change in teams or whatever, but it seems that Hulkenberg is generally getting more out of the car.
Yes.
I'm not going to say like it was the wrong move, because I still think that was the best possible move Ricciardo could have made for his career long term.
Agree.
Was to get out of Red Bull. So I don't think it was the wrong move, but I will admit to being surprised. I kind of said at the start of the season it wouldn't totally shock me if Hulkenberg had an advantage. While everyone's going off.
Yeah, we've lost 3
Van Dorn's in the wall now. But that said, I would never have thought that Hulkenberg would have had such a big advantage. And I mean, I don't know if it's going to stay this way for the rest of the season, but I don't know. He doesn't seem settled in the car. I mean, in the press, he seems quite happy at Renault, but in the car, he never seems to look comfortable. And then he surprised me in qualifying, because I didn't expect to see him unlock that pace suddenly. Mm-hmm. And I thought both cars were on course for a good finish, considering the circumstances of the Grand Prix. And I thought, okay, well, actually, over race distance, the Renault might actually be okay, given how much tyre life is preserved by how easy it is on its tyres. But then, of course, the engines both failed at the same corner on the same lap at the same time. I mean, you couldn't write something like that.
How very Arrows Spain 1998
yes.
of them.
Yes. Precisely.
Only you would get that reference.
Well, I love me some Arrows. French engineering, French strategy, how are you supposed to win like that? That is exactly what Wellington would have said. So kudos to you. Yeah, I'm just... it doesn't look like it's going to rain, actually. I'm just astonished that happened, and I don't know at what point they're going to concede, because they're still talking like, let us get a few upgrades under our belt and this car will come good, but I don't know what point they will concede that something about it isn't working for both their drivers. Mm-hmm. Now again, maybe Danny finds his feet in the next Grand Prix, and that comment, is lost to the winds of history. But the differential just looks a little too big to be closed quickly. I don't know if it'll take the full season for him to find his feet or what, but
it's Hulkenberg's team and it's been his team for quite a while. And I've always kind of thought, actually, when he walks in, I know he's been signed as the big star pay driver, but actually someone's had their foot under the table for quite a long time as their lead star driver already, and that will have been those decisions of how that car works and how they're going to not build a team around Hulkenberg, but how they're going to make the car suit his driving style will have happened long before Danny Rick had even set foot of I'm not staying at Red Bull this year. And so this year their whole entire ethos will have been built around, well, we've got Hulkenberg and whoever, Carlos Sainz probably, because plans would not have been altered. I don't know how their driving styles are. I can see there being all kinds of interesting decisions that will have taken place before Ricciardo have got there, so no wonder he feels like it's not really his team, his way of working, all of those kind of decisions. Yeah, he's like someone who's not comfortable in his own skin yet, and it needs to happen, but it needs to happen within the next few rounds for me.
Yeah, The thing is, I'm starting to lose faith that Renault will get on top of their inherent engineering problems. Because let's not forget that this is on the edge of reliability and slipping back from the main teams. That's been an issue for a few seasons now. And I don't know if they're in a period of decline that they're not going to really shake themselves out of.
So I would say that they're still in a... This year is the anomaly year. Since 2016, where they hit that all-time low, they've been slowly building themselves back up again. And I think the thing for me is that this year I was expecting them to break away from the midfield and to kind of be in no man's land, a bit like the Renault of, this is another obscure reference, 2002, where Button and Trulli would get 7th and 8th all the time, and they'd get 4th in the Constructors' Championship because McLaren, Williams and Ferrari were the top 3 teams, and they were kind of sitting in 4th, ready and waiting for Alonso to join in 2003 and then get a first win. And I was expecting that, and it's not happened.
Oh, god damn it.
They're mired more in the midfield than they should be, and they should be Q3 and 7-8 all the way through.
Well, I mean, to be honest, based on the tech analyses I saw coming out of the tech blogs and from people like Gary Anderson, based on what we saw in pre-season testing, Renault had made the biggest gains and were supposed to have joined the top teams. And then, we got to Australia and saw that clearly that wasn't the case. And that, surprising almost everybody, actually Red Bull and Honda seem to have the number 3 package still, which I don't think anybody really saw coming. And certainly I think a lot of credit goes to Toro Rosso for that.
Sacrificial
because,
lamb. Sacrificial bull, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I'm completely astonished. I'm super proud of Honda. I'm a big Honda fan. I just didn't see the results that they've had so far, be the ones that we'd expect to see. That said, Toto Wolff said the other day that the Constructors' Championship as it stands at the moment does not tell the full story, and I think that is as true for Red Bull as it is for Mercedes.
Agreed.
I think, no doubt about it, they've had an excellent start to the season, but I don't think all of that is down to them. I think there's been so many other factors at play. Exactly, Beetlejuice. Do they really have the 3rd best package? I'm not totally convinced that they do. No,
I think that's Verstappen punching above his weight. Because I wonder if the Verstappen versus Gasly is Verstappen punching above his weight, or is Gasly really a true reflection of where that package is?
It's a good point to raise, but we know how Red Bull operate, and whichever driver is in front is the one that's representing where the car belongs.
Yeah.
But to be honest, that's not really a criticism of Red Bull, because I think most teams actually take that attitude.
Oh yeah.
If you've got one guy qualifying 8th and the other qualifying 18th week in, week out, then you will point to that guy and say, this car is capable of 8th. So why aren't you anywhere near 8th? So lame.
Rain, sorry.
No. I was just complaining lame because I'm not going to get points if we all have to stop again.
No.
A quick break from our race review, because that segues into something actually regarding not having enough time. We are not going to be able to finish the season this year because the new game is going to drop early.
Yeah.
And so we just want to apologise in advance to anyone who actually cares about the championship, that it's not going to be a full championship this season, because out of nowhere Cody's announced that the game's coming out in a little over 2 months, which means we will finish the season 1 or 2 races early. But I don't think anybody really cares. It just messes up our statistics, and we've been so good for doing full seasons recently.
Yeah.
It just messes up our flow and statistics. However, it does mean at least we can drive the cars we're talking about, which there's very limited overlap where that actually happens.
I tell you what, with this season and the way how it's all sorted out, where basically all of the midfield is all of the positions, I don't really know who we should go for as a team. I've never been so conflicted.
Well, I mean, the things are complicated by the fact that apparently we can have a custom livery.
Yeah, yes.
Because I was thinking we should go to McLaren because we both like the orange.
Yeah.
I mean, the teams we haven't done so far are the big three, obviously, plus Toro Rosso and Williams. We've done all the rest at some stage. And I'm saying that because I'm classing Sauber and Alfa Romeo as the same team.
Yeah. We could Toro Rosso it as the return of the torpedo, the return of the enchilada, return of the taco.
Return of the taco. Beetlejuice says, "What's the problem? 2 failcasts per week, problem solved." To be honest with you, mate, the last month it's been a struggle to get one out per month. So, but also, we need to have something to talk about, and we're trying to avoid being on weekends where there's a real Grand Prix because it takes up fans' time. An F1 fan will lose a good 4 hours, maybe 5 hours even, on a race weekend to F1. They won't probably want to see a podcast as well on top of that. But it's all right. We'll figure something out. We will figure something out. I mean, we can always do one midweek interstitial episode to finish the season if there was demand for it. Regarding the race, then we should get back onto topic because we don't have a huge amount of time left.
No, this is sped by this one.
Here's a suggestion. You take Williams, I join the call once per race and yell at you full gas as Patrick Head. I like that format. That's a good idea. We should figure out a way to make that happen.
As long
just
as
get on and go full hairdryer treatment.
As long as that segment is called Lose Your Head.
lose your head with Patrick Head. Yes. This is beautiful. It writes itself.
Or give me head.
Oh, for fuck's sake!
It's because
I'm about to get an overtake.
There's a really slow McLaren out there, but I don't know.
Alright, well at least I can recharge my ERS, save a bit of fuel, and maybe I'll come in and preemptively switch to the Inters. Because we're going to need them in a lap or two, aren't we?
Okay, it's the McLaren that's pulled off. Blanchiment.
Is it going to be a full safety car?
No.
Or just a VSC?
I've yet to see one get upgraded, but I've seen other games where it's happened on other people's games.
I was going to ask who we should talk about next, but Beetlejuice is about to drop some interesting German media about Vettel onto us. So, I hate this fucking Delta. I have returned to racing speed.
Have you returned to Racing Point?
Oh yeah, let's talk. Let's talk Racing Point, and I'll come back to your comment, Beetlejuice, afterwards. Racing Point Force Badger-Stroll. What was your takeaway from the Grand Prix?
Disappointing, and without the El Stratage, I was unimpressed just in general. I know they've got essentially 2018 point B. As a car, and that they are working towards basically just getting this car up and running and being a bit better in its extended test session. But I was hoping for more on a circuit which, I don't know why, for me, Bahrain is a bit more powery, so I was expecting there to be a bit more of a better run through of things. Nice to see.
Force India always struggled at Bahrain, right?
I think so, yeah. Well, no, Perez got podiums there before.
Did he?
So yeah, he's had a podium at Bahrain. 2017, I'm going to say off the top of my head, but I might be lying entirely. But yeah, I was just...
Beetlejuice says they should have a point reduced from their total every race for the horrible name. I agree.
Yes, I don't
support
like this name.
Rule change approved. It's a horrible name, isn't it? And the logo's stupid as well. It looks like a zit. Or a nipple. It looks like a nipple.
It looks like a nipple, or I was wondering if it was a homage to Force India for it to be a bindi, but I didn't know.
Whatever it is, it's crap and we all hate it.
Yes, and it's blatantly there for rebranding purposes. That's what I don't like, because then it's got no... How can you ever have a history of a name which changes depending on what the title sponsor is?
Yeah, you can't.
Yeah.
I think the only title branded team that went down as sort of recognisable was Orange Arrows.
Yeah.
Because like they did actually change the team name and it became somewhat memorable. But yeah, I mean, Stroll was very disappointing, I thought, given that he did well in Australia, and I was hoping that we were going to get a chance to see him show what he can do. It just never came, did it? It just never came.
No, and that was it was a poor accident at turn 2. It's such a weird corner, turn 2 anyway. But for him to then just nerf Grosjean, and then you had the puncture, and it looked pretty with all the sparks, I'll give him that. But yeah, immediately you're just like, oh no, don't do that. So yeah, shame.
I'm glad you've mentioned the sparks. Now, given that Alexander Albon was nearly immolated,
Yeah.
what's our take? Because I agree, it looks spectacular, particularly, night race sparks, and I do like seeing the cars spark, but I mean, at what point do we say, okay, that maybe is getting a bit out of hand, maybe it's a bit too dangerous? I mean, they got rid of sparking under trays previously to monitor ride height levels, right?
I don't know, actually.
Because they replaced it with a wooden plank, and you were allowed to wear away a certain percentage of the wooden plank, but any more than that, and the car was deemed to be riding too low.
Yes, I remember.
And obviously, you can't measure the same way with metal, but they brought it back for the dramatic effect. But I don't know if there's any. I mean, they are wearing fireproof suits, but I don't know at what point it becomes unsafe to be showered in flaming hot metal like that.
All we need is for someone to not have their fuel flap
hell.
close automatically and a spark to go in.
I keep forgetting that you lose downforce.
Safety car.
No overtaking. Reduce your pace. Keep your delta numbers
Shit.
positive as before.
This is my third wing of the Grand Prix. Intermediate tyres. No, not medium, Jeff. Intermediate.
Slow down. Your delta is negative, which means you are too.
There we go, we got there in the end. Box this lap.
So we're going to have a one-lap safety car race at the end. Or are we going to finish under safety car? I can't work it out.
No, the game usually has it that once the safe, basically you have a lap where all the cars are in the queue.
Oh, it's told me to go in for inters. I'm in, I'm going. Oh, I might need a front wing after that. Fuck.
But this could save my Grand Prix.
I think it might. I don't know what's gone on with the AI though. The AI has been awful crashy round here.
I'm tired of this fucking Delta. We can't overtake each other. I end up losing like a second. Confirm change.
Cool, everyone's in from inters.
I know our delta is too low, Jeff. Shall we move on to Ferrari then?
Yes.
Because as Beetlejuice pointed out, Vettel has complained about the look of the 2021 regulations, and he says that it seems that Vettel's feeling the pressure, and I would certainly agree with that assessment.
Absolutely.
Because let's be honest, Charles Leclerc was stunning.
Yes.
And his attitude that he demonstrated initially at Sauber seems to have prolonged, and he's doing a fantastic job. He seemed totally relaxed before getting in the car, despite the pressure of the world's press being on him. And when I saw him lose it off the line, and he had that trouble finding grip in the first few corners, I thought, okay, well, this is where we see we test his mettle, we see the making of the man here. And he handled it superbly and managed to get past on merit to get back in the lead. And the fact that he was not shy about going toe-to-toe with Vettel and then beat him fair and square, so exciting. And I'm so happy that Ferrari broke with tradition and went for a younger driver, because it's totally out of character for them, but God did it deliver.
Isn't it paying off? Isn't it paying off? And I'm almost glad that they didn't do it sooner, because I think we've now got the real deal in there. But completely agree. The whole doing it on merit, genuinely passing Vettel on track with a decent move, had his measure all weekend. The race was deservedly his. Such cruel luck to have not had it. But even then, with the way how he treated the team afterwards, he says all the right things. He's just a breath of fresh air at the front of the grid, and I hope he can keep that kind of character and mentality beforehand. And I'm so glad that when he was in Formula 2 and Formula 3, when I used to tweet him, he would like those tweets and occasionally respond to them, and I'm going to keep them somewhere hidden.
I remember you telling me about that. He just seems like a genuinely nice guy, and obviously, we don't know him.
No.
But it's very rare in Formula One to see someone with such talent maintain such a cool head. When things don't go their way, you don't normally see that. And I would have forgiven him a little bit of a mini tantrum, actually, because I don't remember being so upset at the outcome of a race since Hungary '97.
Yeah.
Which broke my heart. I've not been as heartbroken about a result since then. And the fact, that he managed to drive with such dignity while missing half his engine, and didn't immediately tear the team to pieces. I think that stands as testament, and I think what we're starting to see really is that more often than not, drivers with a cool head and talent will prevail long term against drivers who are talented with a hot head. Ricciardo demonstrated that against Verstappen most of their time together. Reliability issues notwithstanding, but we saw time and again that Ricciardo's ability to generally stay cool and measured enabled him to, over the course of a season, perform better. And I think Ricciardo exemplified that so well that he stands as sort of a spearhead of that philosophy. And Leclerc, I think, seemingly represents the zenith of where that attitude leads, because I think his time at Sauber was stellar. I mean, a shaky start, but he was a rookie. What do we expect? And at no point during his shaky start did he blame the team, blame the car or anything, blame anyone but himself. He just said, I'm not familiar with it, I need to learn, I need to get better. And when you're prepared to say that and own up to it, then teams, I imagine, or at least the staffing teams, are prepared to help you. It seems like between him and the new boss at Ferrari, the atmosphere inside Ferrari is much better. And the fact that, almost the entire grid have nothing but praise for him following that Grand Prix is very positive as well. I mean, to hear Lewis... oh my God!
Did you see what happened there?
I got overtaken before the green flag, and then they braked and took my wing off.
I have genuinely no idea, but I got transported to outside of the bus stop chicane for no particular reason, but it gave me like a 2-second advantage. It's really weird. Fuck it, I'm taking it.
Oh, I've got a red front wing again.
Because you know me with rain.
I slowed down so I didn't go into the back of the car in front before turning onto the start-finish straight. The flags were still yellow, and then Leclerc and Gasly overtook me, and Gasly, for the second time this race, took my wing off, and now I've been hit by a McLaren and spun.
Oh no! Now, you're not in the barriers at Le Combe like the rest of them, are you? I don't think I'm going to win this.
Box this lap. I can't drive the car. Actually, do you know what? I might even retire.
Oh, dude, no.
I know, talk about getting shafted. You are completely right, Beetlejuice. Yeah, this will be a DNF for me. There we go. But at least I can get some screenshots on board with you.
Dude.
It's all right. I'm not too bothered. Let's get some sexy onboard shots of you.
Oh God.
Did I get my wheel to work properly? Actually, we were talking about that before you joined the stream, and the answer is no. I'm still like 3.8 to 4.2 seconds behind where I am with the pad. I'm sure I'll get there with time, but as it stands right now, I want to put as much time in with it as I can before the new game drops, and then the next season I want to do with my wheel, but so far early results have not been encouraging. Where early results have been encouraging, though, is the last team for today, which will be Mercedes.
Yes.
Who have been... Well, they were the unfair beneficiaries, I felt, of Charles Leclerc's bad luck and Sebastian Vettel's... I'm going to say bad luck. A lot of people say incompetence, but he was on the dirty line and, the car just went. I'm not really sure what people expected him to have done differently.
It looked like such a weird spin as well.
Yeah. In terms of force feedback and settings, I meant, did I fix the issue? No. The force feedback is still a problem. I don't get any feeling from it. And in terms of settings, I keep tinkering with steering sensitivity, but there comes a certain point that no matter what setting I'm on, if the corner's too sharp, the game seems to stop registering the input, and I just understeer out wide. I'm sure there's a solution to it. I just haven't had time to find one yet. But yes. Bottas 2.0 didn't seem to turn up this weekend. He just didn't have that. I mean, he had the edge in the press interviews. He seemed like a man who was going to take no nonsense. But in the race, Hamilton was the guy, and I actually have to applaud Hamilton for what was, by all accounts, a really good drive.
Yeah.
Given how he sounded going into the Grand Prix and given his radio messages, usually you can tell from that tone of voice that he's going to be off his pace. But actually, I think he extracted as much from that car as could be expected. And yes, it required misfortune for his rivals for them to turn that into a win. Mm-hmm. I still felt he was a solid third, and deservedly so.
Yeah.
So,
do you think then
Bottas 2.0 BS talk, a Maltese doesn't suddenly turn into a bulldog? I agree, but his attitude does seem more forceful, actually.
And he showed it at the beginning of the race. I felt that he did show some big balls when he was going up against Hamilton, and I was quite impressed with that. I do wonder now, is Bottas 2.0 Beardy Edition a flash in the pan, or if what's going to happen, because he needs to basically keep it going. Because remember, China last year, he made some silly mistakes, so he needs to not do that there. Or was it 2017? I can't remember. But he just needs to not let the fact that Hamilton got the better of him this time get him down for the future, because then otherwise he won't recover.
No, definitely not. Beetlejuice says he does not have the talent to match Lewis over the course of a year. Couldn't agree more.
Yep.
That's objectively true, but he does have to start driving the way he did in Australia, because he is a man driving for his career. I just want to take a moment. Very well driven, young sir.
Thank you very much, sir.
I have dropped 2 places in the constructors, and you have opened up a near 40-point lead over me. So,
wow.
Double bravo. I think we're still on course for our best ever constructors finish, but I think this is your season.
Which you didn't look like it at the beginning, because you were
no,
in
it
front.
didn't. I mean,
we've still got time for a swing.
Yeah, it's still all to play for, but it would definitely require DNFs for you. Theory: Ocon to Mercedes next year, Haas to replace Grosjean with Bottas. I could actually see that happening.
Yeah.
I actually could, but I don't know. I wonder if Haas actually would end up. Here's an outlandish theory, and I'm not sure if I believe it myself, but I could actually see Haas taking a young driver who's not on the grid right now, and Bottas returning to Williams to replace Kubica, because that would be the only drive open to him. But I'm not confident in that assertion at all. I mean, I'd say the Alfa Romeo seat is a promising one, but Kimi signed a 2-season deal. And although Giovinazzi, who... Actually, we haven't talked about Sauber this episode.
No.
Maybe we can squeeze them in at the end now.
Yeah.
I think Kimi's been doing excellent work there, but I have concerns about Giovinazzi. He just doesn't seem... anywhere near the level of Raikkonen, which should be worrying for everyone at Alfa Romeo, to be honest.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's... And the issue has been, not necessarily pace-wise... I think race pace-wise, he was a bit better when it got to Bahrain, but his damage is not being able to pull it out in quali, because then he's already at the back of the train that Kim is at the front of, and then he's busy trying to overtake and getting into mischief with Kvyat. I thought that was a bit of a unfortunate incident between the pair of them. And yeah, Giovinazzi needs to up his game, because there's nothing worse. And I think like Gasly is starting to feel this now, of having your peak at the beginning of your career.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, it does happen. I don't know, there's quite a few drivers, Bottas is definitely one of them. Giovinazzi is another. Gasly is another. There are plenty of drivers, Grosjean, of course, who are in essence driving for the career. I mean, one would argue that really maybe Gasly shouldn't be in that position, but he undoubtedly is. And hopefully that spurs some interesting competition over the year. But there's very few seats I expect to change next year, and it's kind of hard to see where the chips are going to fall.
I agree, because to me this feels like possibly one of the strongest grids we've had for a very long time, where you couldn't argue the place of any of them, apart from, even if you look at it objectively as from a Kubica perspective, who is to me the weakest link on the grid, and that says a lot. I know he's only got one out, but yes, you know what I mean.
Well, I mean, the thing is, like, if you consider Kubica based on his legacy, then absolutely he deserves to be there. And but certainly I think this is the strongest grid we've had in a very, very long time.
Yeah.
The only people I believe who have no place on it are Kubica and Grosjean. And in terms of who I'd replace them with, I'd ideally like to see someone like Felix Rosenqvist or Verne even. I think Jev still has a lot to offer the sport, but was never really given the opportunity. I mean, there's very little room, I think, for improvement over what we've got, because I don't remember as well having such an abundance of amazing young talent. Of course, Ocon, yes. Sorry, he was going to be my shoe-in. Yeah, because Ocon is a sad loss. But, I mean, imagine if Ocon was on the grid. I can't remember a time where we've had such an abundance of really amazing young talent.
No.
And there's no one, like, if you exclude the fact that Williams is so rubbish, right?
Yeah.
I don't think this season I've been able to go into a Grand Prix confident of who's going to be last.
No, I know what you mean. And Q1 is now exciting. Back when a few years ago it was less so, because there's always a surprise scalp, which is great to deal with. And the midfield is just sublimely supreme. I want to it. Front of the field is much more spicy than what it used to be. I just want to see Red Bull get themselves a bit in line, and then we've got a 5-car battle for the top up there. And I'll be a happy bunny. And off the top of that as well, just very, very quickly, the Formula 2 races were absolutely superb as well. I know lots of people were busy having a stiffy over Mick Schumacher, but my two men done very, very well. Delatraz was leading for most of the sprint race, which was amazing. And it was lovely to see a Delatraz, Schumacher, a Lacey all on one grid. And my other favourite, Guan Yu Zhou, got fourth in the second race, or fifth, I can't remember. So yeah, mega superb for that. And what was the other one I wanted to say? Tatiana Calderon was not terrible. Well, she was second last in qualifying, but she was much better in the race. And Takuma Sato won at IndyCar.
Whoop, whoop. Before we go out, I just want to point out, I'm looking through the race director for the incidents. And,
isn't it ridiculous?
Gasly, Alonso and Magnussen all have an unserved stop-go for collisions with each other. So there must have been like they all backed up into each other like a concertina and then all got punishments that they didn't serve.
Don't.
Well. Well, thank you, sir, and thank you everyone who dropped in, particularly you, Beetlejuice, for giving us some stuff to chat about. We will see you all the weekend after next, where we will be in... Where will we be?
Would have done China.
Oh, no, I mean in the game.
Oh, Italy.
Yeah, oh, yeah, Monza. I'm good at Monza.
Oh, I'm not. This will be your one, then.
Yeah, well, I've won Monza the last 2 years, so hopefully I can repeat that. Thank you for everyone who's watching on replay as well. I know from the stats we tend to get, at least on my stream, more viewers on replay than live. We will see you in 2 weeks. I hope you all have a wonderful end to your week.
Yes,
Bye-bye.
take care. Happy racing.